Murali End. Welcome to the show. We're here when you're high. We're here when you're low. Some days you're happy, some days you wanna when happy it's we when mad it's them. It's the same place, Murali End. Sri Lankan Cricket we gon' represent. So tell a friend.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Murali End. Sorry we're a bit late. We all enthusiastically tweeted. I say we all, I did. Enthusiastically tweeted it would be at 9:30. Then it got moved to 10:30, and now somehow it's 10 to 11 when we've started this. Mainly, that is all entirely my fault. But we've got an absolute jam-packed show for you. Firstly, the whole gang is here. Got Estelle, Dominic, Nick, Sri Lanka's best journalist, Professor of Cricketology, and Sri Lanka's premier cricket historian. What a lineup we've got. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about the Women's World Cup. Sadly, it ended in for us on Friday when India got on Thursday, was it, when India got the win, and then our final game got rained off. We'll go into all of that. We'll also talk about the cancelled LPL, what that means for the men's side and their road to their World Cup in February. We'll also, I've got a clip of Robin Uthappa talking about Sri Lankan cricket as well that I think we need to dissect and get into, that I think might be something to talk about if you haven't seen it. Obviously, I think that because I've clipped up and put it in, which is also the reason why I'm late. Of course, if you want to get involved, join us in the comment section. We'll open up the studio for you as well. You can have a chat with us, tell us what you think. There's lots going on with Sri Lanka at the moment, even though there's not much cricket being played. I think the first place to start, though, is with you, Estelle, and talking about the Women's World Cup. We've finished 5th. We kind of, last time, previewing the World Cup, we kind of thought a 5th place finish would be kind of okay. The way it's all washed out, what do you make of it?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, if you had told the team ahead of the tournament that they would finish in 5th, they would have been happy with that, because that would have meant that they would have finished above one of the big 5 teams, and as it stands they've finished above New Zealand. But I think if you look at the performances, you can't really be satisfied with how Sri Lanka went. Yes, I mean, weather played a massive part in their competition. I think it benefited them in some ways. If you're being realistic, taking points off Australia would probably not have happened otherwise. And the disadvantage of that game against South Africa, where they were so unlucky to have it reduced at the last moment. But I think if you look at the full games they played, or the full innings that they were able to put together, I don't think that they can walk away kind of satisfied with their performances. They had some moments of brilliance and some good performances, but overall, I think despite the end result, the way they got there and kind of the performances they put in, I don't think anyone in that contingent will be really satisfied.
Firstly, I will say Australia got lucky getting a point from Colombo, but Dom, let's come to you on this. What's your kind of takeaways from what we did see off the team?
Yeah, I think Estelle summarized it really well, where we saw some moments of brilliance, some moments of excellence, but consistency was largely missing. And you can kind of sum it up in every game. Right? We think of Inoka Ranawira's spell in that opener against India. We can think about Hassani Pereira's 80 that she scored against New Zealand. We can think of the 4 wickets that Chamri Atapattu got in the last over against Bangladesh. But that's what it was. It was flashes rather than consistency. And that's what was missing. We saw a lot of flashes. We saw a lot of promise and things that we could say, okay, well, if this wasn't a World Cup, we might be able to look forward to it and say, hey, this is something we can potentially hang our hat on. But this was the time to do it. This was the time to put it all together and perform at the highest level. And there were chances there for the taking. We've talked about this. The India game goes differently. Maybe we're discussing this a little bit differently. So I think that was what stood out to me, is there were flashes of brilliance, some good play, but not consistent game-winning performances. Even the one game they won was not a consistent performance. It was kind of stealing victory from the jaws of defeat. And there were just, I think also some of the players will look back at this tournament and think that they never really put their hand up, even though they are good players. So for me, it's a tournament of missed opportunities, of unfulfilled promise. We can look at the 5th place and say, take a little pride in that. But at the end of the day, it was one where I think the result could have been better. And I would have loved for it to have been better, because I think what it showed is if this team plays well and plays as a unit, they're capable of being in that top 4 or 5 group. But they weren't able to do that at the end of the day consistently.
Nick, should we take some solace from the fact that actually we are kind of upset that we haven't made the top 4 and didn't put a better kind of didn't perform better than we actually did? Because actually, when you listen to the commentary around the women's cricket, the expectations for people who don't follow the team as closely as us seems to be actually Sri Lanka are never going to compete anyway, when we all know actually we've got more than enough talent to be mixing it up with everyone else, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make, Marky. While I completely echo what Dom and Estelle say about consistency, I think we've also got to remember that there wasn't a lot of match practice going into this tournament, right? And then half of the cricket Sri Lanka were supposed to play ended up getting washed out, and there was a lack of consistency, but they weren't a million miles away, right? We saw some really great knocks from Hassani Pereira and Nilakshi De Silva, kind of a bit more batting ballast than we expected against England. You'd argue maybe that if that Natsiva Brunt stat catch sticks, that you're looking at potentially a different outcome. So I think there is cause for optimism, but I totally agree with Dom and Esti that Sri Lanka have got to find a way of scoring runs more consistently, right? And it feels too often like 4 or 5 down is kind of all out, and that you're looking for someone to make that big contribution. Otherwise, it's going to be a subpar total. So I think there is work to be done on the batting. And it's a concern because you wonder how much longer is Chamari going to stick around. There's a couple of other ladies in the side who I think probably are thinking that they're closer to the end than they are to the start. So we're going to see a bit of churn in the next couple of years. And I don't quite know where Sri Lanka are. I think my biggest feel from this tournament is just disappointing that we didn't get to see more cricket.
Esti, we'll get to all the cricket stuff, and we'll get to Alex Hartley's tweets about the rain in Colombo, and we'll talk about all the I suppose the politics of it in a bit. But let's continue to talk about the team. Nick brought up a good point there about how long Chamari got left, and that there was probably other players there who are closer to the end than they are to the beginning. You are, as you wrote about in a piece last week, you're the journalist in the whole world closest to the women's side. What's your sense about how long the older players have got left in their tanks?
I mean, I think for a lot of them, this is their last ODI World Cup, right? I don't, to be completely honest, I had this conversation with Fidel from Cricinfo about Chamari. I don't see her playing the next World Cup in 4 years. I don't think she's going to stick around until she's 39. He thinks she will, but it's very hard to see that. Inoka Ranavira is another. We thought she wouldn't make this one either, right? Because she was out of contention at the Asia Cup. Udeshika is another one. And even some of the others, I would say, like you never know what's going to happen, right? With some of those batters, Nilakshi De Silva, Anushka Sanjeevani, you don't know whether they're going to be able to kind of maintain that level for the next 4 years. So I think for at least those three, I would not see them playing the next World Cup. I think Chamari, to be completely honest, she's just waiting for a good performance so that she can leave on a high, because she's spoken about it so many times about wanting to retire and then being convinced not to, and and then the Asia Cup happened, and she knows how dependent the team is, right, on her. So I think she's just waiting for if Sri Lanka makes the semi-finals in this tournament, maybe she retires then and there, right? Because that's a high. So we'll have to wait and see. I think Sri Lanka cricket will also have to kind of take it tournament by tournament. I expect her to play the World Cup next year in England. And then if Sri Lanka qualifies for the Champions Trophy, it's going to be in Sri Lanka. So she would want to play that as well, right? So then you're like 2 years away from the next ODI World Cup. So then what does she think? Does she make, a call there? So yeah, you got to wait and see. But I think if Sri Lanka puts in a good performance, like if they make the semis or, have a really good tournament, I would expect her to kind of call it a day.
That performance against Bangladesh, though, I mean, that final over was like a scene from a superhero film, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like when Thor regains his powers in the first Thor movie, and he remembers who he is, kind of thing. It was like watching that, and it feels like so many times over the years you felt like, oh, this is it. They've figured her out. She's never going to hit another boundary again. Or like I was like, her bowling is just kind of not where it was. And then suddenly 4 wickets and 4 balls. And you're like, all right, I've totally forgotten.
Yeah, and what was interesting about that was, I don't know how much of that was on TV, but like before the last over, she was defending 9, right? So there were like 5 different people around her telling her what to do. Deshika was there, Kavisha was there, Nilakshi was there. And then she just says like, just go.
That was not on
right?
TV.
So the conversation, I asked her about it at the press conference. She says she wanted Udeshika to bowl. And Udeshika had told her, look, you're in a good rhythm. You should bowl. Then I asked her about the others. And she said, no, they were just telling me that Jyoti likes to hit straight. But I have a theory. I think, they were conveying a message from the dugout that somebody else should bowl. I mean, I would think that was the message, but she just said, look, I'm going to do it, and took on the responsibility. And like you said, like how many times have we seen that, right, with bat or ball, just that ability to kind of take the game on and deliver.
I mean, I've been lucky enough. I was born at just the right time to see all of Sri Lankan cricket's greatest moments, I think. And that for me is right up there. But I think sadly it's one of those ones that will be forgotten. But I'm a big believer that magic resides in Sri Lankan cricket bats and balls, and that was one of those moments, right, where you're just like, oh, this is why you do it. Like this is why we do what we do here, because you know that there's always going to be a miracle at any given moment. Anyway, Esty, when you were talking to the coaching staff, did you get any sense of what their individual plans might be? Because there's another World Cup in June. And did you get any sense of what they want to do in the run-up to this T20 World Cup in England in June?
So I would not be surprised if Rumesh Ratnayaka stays on, because he's obviously had a positive impact on the team. But it's also, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like he's a very good coach, and he's obviously built them up to a certain level. But there has to also be some more growth. I think we kind of had this conversation during that Bangladesh game about how, at some point you have to stop talking about, or not focus just on the positives, but you have to kind of deal with the fact that some places there is no progress, right, in some areas. I try to get an answer out of Chamari about it, because like with that kind of batting performance, right, can you just focus on positives and say, okay, Hasini batted well? Should there not be some discussion about how she got out, right, and the kind of shots that were played in that innings? But it seems like Rumesh is working for the players, and they are benefiting from it. So I would expect him to stay on. He's also, I think, in a situation where there is no, we have to admit, there is no second 11, right? There is no 8th batter, I would say. There is no 8th batter to come into that side if someone is out of form. And I think that's one of the reasons why they have stuck so kind of diligently on Bishmi, is that they don't have anyone to replace her with. So he's also in a situation where he's basically been handed this, 15, 16 players, probably a bit more depth in the bowling than the batting, but like he has to kind of make do with what he has on hand, and he's been able to kind of bring out the best in them. So I would expect him to stay and kind of build that coaching staff around him. He's got a couple of coaches who've been around for the last year or so. I don't think there'll be that many changes. I think the batting will be the area that they want to focus on, because if you look at any of the teams, like you look at the um, kind of the bottom ranked teams in the world, they've all got good bowling attacks. We saw Bangladesh, we saw Pakistan, how good they are, but they can't bat. And Sri Lanka, unfortunately, in this tournament, fell into that bracket as well, right? Where, we've seen some progress with the batting over the last 2 to 3 years, but we didn't really see much of it in this tournament. So the batting will certainly be the focus. And like I said, there's no eighth batter, so they need to develop a couple of players who can maybe come into that side.
Nick, I'll come to you on this before we hear from Dom, but I think what's kind of frustrating for me is I think if you look at almost for the Sri Lanka women's side, well, and for all our sides actually, kind of post-COVID 2021 it's like zero BC. It's like the beginning, the restart, right? And since then, you can kind of track them. You can track our women's side, and it kind of feels like there's kind of improvements everywhere. Like we're a better fielding side. We bowl more efficiently. We do kind of bat efficiently, but that kind of consistency in getting the high scores isn't there. But what I do think we have seen, which I do think the whole, the coaches and the team deserve some credit for, is we are seeing what used to be, there was a stage not that long ago where we were kind of happy if 5 of our players got to double digits. But now we're starting to see them actually put together scores without anyone ever scoring big. But you want to see those 30s become 50s and the 50s become centuries. There's only 3 Sri Lankan players who have scored a century in ODI cricket, and we just need that to become a little bit more consistent, right? If 2 or 3 of them, for me, the 2 players that had a quiet tournament were, which if they'd performed, if they'd fired up, we would have been. Would have been one more place higher up that table. Harsh right? They didn't do a huge amount. I'm not saying they didn't have horrendous tournaments, but they weren't in the runs. Those 2 got the runs. I reckon we'd have clipped a win against either England or India, and would be through to the next round, right?
Yeah, I think so. It felt like a really quiet tournament batting-wise for Kavisha Dilhari. For me, I was expecting more from her. And yeah, I think you're right to touch. Harshita was also without a big score, right? And look, she's been in great form the past 18 months. Sri Lanka only played, 4 full games? So it can happen. It's not a huge sample size. I felt bad for Vishmi as well, right? Who had that tortuous innings and then came out looking really kind of buzzy against South Africa and then got injured and then they went off, and it just felt like fate was against her. But I think there's no doubt, right, that over the next 2 years we need to see those young players start to deliver more consistently. I don't know where Kavisha Dilhari's like ODI and T20 numbers are, but I think they're still, her averages are like much lower than you'd expect for an international player. And how long can you keep on talking about someone as a player of promise and a player of real quality without them backing it up numerically, right?
Yeah.
And the same, I think that was Hasni Pereira's first ODI 50, a long way into her
All
career.
All
format, yeah. So
140 plus matches.
And I'm not saying this to sort of denigrate or chastise, but I think the whole kind of setup would agree that there have to be just more consistent runs from everyone in that top 6, right? Because as we've said, Chamari is winding down, so it can't keep being like, so she's going to dig us out with 100 every now and then. It's got to be a communal team building effort. But it requires a lot more cricket being played and building a lot more confidence, right?
Yeah, Dom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it gets to Estelle's point about the coaching, because I think about what you can control and what you can't control, right? So that batting mentality and turning starts into finishes is something, and maybe it's going to sound weird to say it, but it requires no talent to do it, right? You're at the international level, you can occasionally score big runs, but taking those 20s and 30s and making them into 50s, that's about game awareness. It's about match awareness. It's about figuring out what the shots are to play. It's not that they don't have the talent to score 50s. They obviously do, but it's that mentality, the approach, it's the mental side of it. I also think it's similar with fielding. This was an area where, yes, fielding does have talent requirements, but there were plenty of times where there was a dolly or a straightforward catch that was dropped. So to my mind, that's what I think you can call out Ramesh for, is how prepared are your players to play at the highest level? Because we're not just playing to be competitive anymore. We're not just playing to say, hey, we put in a good performance against this side. We're playing to win matches, right? And that's what we were talking about at a World Cup. We're playing to win, to get into a semifinal. And when you're doing that, that's where the frustrations tend to seep in. It's like, okay, we can see all the parts being put together, but at the end of the day, it's about doing it on the field, right? Actually performing and executing, and not just saying, okay, well, we had a chance to win against England, we had a chance to win against India, but what makes teams great and not just okay or decent is having the mental wherewithal to fight through those difficult moments, to say, okay, we're 95 for 1 against England. It's not going to be easy for us to get to 250 odd, but we're in with a chance, and we have to fight it out and figure out what the way is. And that, to me, I think I've been thinking about this a lot, because Mark brought up the lack of gameplay, right? And I think, and I've gone back and forth onto whether this kind of thing is down to lack of gameplay, right? That when you're facing Australia and they've got someone who's got 30, you're already starting to worry about that growing into 80 or 90, because they've been there so many times. They've done that so many times. They have so much confidence. When you haven't played for a while, it can be tricky to say, okay, I'm going to draw on my experience, my sort of mental cache of times that I've done that and I've been able to do that. So I think that's got to be part of it, is as they go forward, as they move forward as a team that's ranked number 6 in ODIs, that's ranked number 7 in T20s, is how do we actually win games and not just put up respectable performances, but take those respectable performances and turn them into victories, and not just have it be a momentary thing, but be a consistent practice. I think this is what you see from the best teams in the world, becoming very professional as opposed to living off of talent, living off of one big innings or one good bowling performance, but how do you stack it up on top of one another? And as Nick said, collaborate as a team to get there.
Yeah, and also, like, just to touch on Dom's point about like the match awareness and stuff, right? Like, there are some things that are basic, and
I'll tell you,
I think
Sri-
what Dom said about the kind of, it doesn't require talent, is that like what are you doing?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Mark,
I pressed the wrong button.
Musical chairs.
There you go. Yeah.
Sorry, I was saying, so there are some things that actually it doesn't require talent, right? It's just like how you think. One example is that Nat Silverbrand's catch, right? What on earth was Udeshika Prabodhini doing at short mid-wicket? What was she doing there? And she was, I kid you not, when they started the game, she was there from the beginning, and I told someone next to me, I was like, what is she doing at short mid-wicket? Because this is your oldest player, right? You know she's going to be slow. And then they had one person on the offside in the deep, and that was Inoka Ranavira. And she had to, like, there, I think probably 10 runs, 15 runs were lost in those first 10 overs because she couldn't cover the ground. And you can't blame her, right? She's like at the latter part of her career. You've got young players, and you've got like Nirakshi and Chamari at mid-on and mid-off, right? and Udeshika had short mid. Sometimes when that's the only player on the leg side who's in the inner ring, you've got her there. It takes a little bit of thinking, right? At that point, sure, you have 3 people to hide in that field. I understand, but like those are things you have to think. I was thinking about this yesterday because was it yesterday? England played New Zealand yesterday, right? And it was like that small detail, Nat Silverbrand was switching fielders around when she noticed someone slow was in a critical position. So those are things you have to keep in mind, right? And as a player, also you should know to point it out that you should not be feeling in that position, and that's not being like, cowardly or not being able to take on the challenge, but you have to be realistic about your ability as well, right? Short mid wicket is not the place for Udeshika Prabodhini to be fielding. And similarly, Nilakshi De Silva's dismissal in that Bangladesh game, if she just stuck around without getting dismissed, 260 was easily on the cards. That was not even par. I think probably 300 plus was par on that pitch. But Sri Lanka knew that they didn't need much against Bangladesh. And literally the break right before she got out, you could see Chamari Atapattu saying like, stay there, don't go for big shots, stay there. Like they showed that visual. The next over she goes for that shot. So that's not that is temperament, right? That is knowing what kind of shots and what kind of way you need to play given the situation, and that situation didn't dictate that kind of shot. So like you can talk, I know we spoke about like preparation a lot, and I think a lot of that comes down to preparation as well. But at the end of the day, like these are players who've been playing for 10-15 years, right?
Yeah.
So the last 4 months shouldn't be making that much of a difference to like how you're playing your game. You've been in
100%
international cricket for a decade, right?
Yeah, the cricketing selection and choices that you're making isn't going to change how much more cricket that they're playing. When I was a kid, the kind of voice of Sri Lankan cricket was Tony Greig, right? He would, he was everyone's favourite commentator when it came to Sri Lanka. He was right in the middle of it in '96. Whenever I think of Aravinda batting, I can hear his voice. The subsequent urban legend, I suppose, is, I don't know if this is true or not, was that actually SLC used to pay him quite a bit of money to kind of big up the Sri Lankan players. I don't know if that's true. Nick, would you know anything about that?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah, but you've heard those rumours as well, right? So, yeah. So the kind of the antithesis of that appears to be Alex Hartley's Twitter feed, because she seems to really despise the weather system in Sri Lanka, to the point where I think maybe the tourist board might want to pay for her to come over in, like, I don't know, mid-January for a couple of weeks, take her around down south, take her to Yala, get her to see some elephants and leopards in the wild, get her to all the nice, lovely hotels that Sri Lanka have, just to show her that actually it doesn't rain in Sri Lanka every day. Estelle, what was it like being in the commentary booth, in the press box, in the stadium through all that rain?
I thought you were going to.
Oh, I thought you were going to.
No. Oh, no.
No, but to be fair, right? To be fair, there is some criticism due, right, to the ICC for scheduling the games the way they did, because it does rain in Sri Lanka at the end of September and in October. And if you look at all the washouts, you probably would have had rain shortened games with results for every single one of them if the games had started at 10 or 11.
Yeah.
So I think like the criticism is fair, and it was like you knew it was going to rain, right? Like, because every day it starts at like 4 to 5 and then it does not stop. So I think some of the criticism was fair, but I mean, the rain watch was not fun. I did not enjoy it. It was, basically turn up to the ground like the last game. You turn up to the ground knowing that it's going to rain, right? You know it's going to rain. The game starts, You sit there, watch 3 overs, it rains. Then you have to wait because they can't call it off, right?
They're
You
holding on
wait,
for any
and
hope,
you
right?
wait, and you
Yeah.
wait, and then they pull the covers off, and you're like, okay, they're gonna get a game in. Great. And then the moment that, like, I remember what the New Zealand game, I think it's like they cleared everything. It was the covers were off, the super stopper was on its last bit, it started raining again. So it was not fun.
To be
And
fair,
I'm glad
like,
that, the weird thing is, like, I went to Mumbai and it's not seasonal rain, there's no rain and no rain expected. Literally the day after our game, it's been raining non-stop there, right? Because the India game was washed out as well.
Hmm.
Not good.
Well, this is the thing. I think the issue, and I think to sort of defend Alex Hartley, I didn't think she said it wasn't a Sri Lankan problem as much as it was.
yeah, I've got no beef with Alex Hartley. I thought it was funny, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can, so because I was thinking about it, and I was like, so you're sitting in the SLC office, and the phone rings, and it's somebody from the BCCI going, "Look, we got this problem. Pakistan won't come to India, and we don't want them anyway. Can we play the games in Colombo?" And then you go, it's SLC, so I assume when India call you, just say you've got no money. It's, oh, sorry, we've got no money. Was like, and they go, it's fine, we'll pay for everything, and you might even make some money out of this. So then you just go, yeah, okay, like, why not? We've got the best ground staff in the world. Of course, they'll keep the game like afloat. I think I can understand why SLC didn't say or didn't point out that it might rain. Ultimately, I also do think that maybe the BCCI don't care that much about whether or not Pakistan get their games played, and I kind of think maybe everyone else was kind of slightly collateral damage in that.
That's probably fair.
I think there's a very clear sense of apathy from the people in the most powerful positions as to the way this played out, right? Because as Esty says, like, it just requires a bit of nimble thinking. You could have played the games in the daytime and it would have been fine. Wasn't the original reason for building the ground in Dambulla because it's drier there when it's wetter around the southwest of Sri Lanka? Like, it just like felt to me like if anyone actually gave a shit about these games getting finished, they would have gotten finished. If India was supposed to be playing in these games, they would have gotten finished. And like, it's a really sorry indictment on the ICC that they didn't care enough to get teams to play anywhere close to their full quota of full games.
Yeah.
And actually, don't you guys think that in the last, but then suddenly the South Africa Sri Lanka game, and the other game, the games that followed from there, there was a big push to actually finish or give a result. So maybe it's because of the criticism that they wanted to make sure that as many games could be finished. But yeah, it felt like at the beginning no one really cared, but they tried to push it at the end of the tournament.
I just worry, as someone who cares deeply about Sri Lankan tourism, what kind of impact this, because it just does, if you consider coming on holiday to Sri Lanka, you don't know much about the place, you might think it's just a place where it rains a lot, and it, like, I'm guessing everyone who's listened to this podcast has been to Sri Lanka, so you'll know that it doesn't rain every day, or if it does, it's just in the evening, and you can go spend all day at the beach.
Can we
anyway?
Can we talk about the irony of all the English people complaining about it raining every day in Sri Lanka? The irony of that. And also, like, I will say this has happened before. We remember the 2019 World Cup. It just happened not to rain on the days when important teams were playing.
Yeah.
I think
Lanka definitely would have won that if it didn't rain.
Yeah, exactly. Jeevan Mendis 5-4 in the final.
Yeah,
it definitely happened.
Yeah, Sri Lanka and Super Overs. We all know how good we are at that, right?
But it's like organizing a tournament in England in February, and then it's like really cold, and people are like, "Oh, it's too cold to play cricket in England." It's like,
Of course, yeah.
I don't know what to say. Also, if you are thinking of going to Sri Lanka and you haven't been, and this podcast is your segue in, don't believe the forecast because it claims it's going to rain every day and it never does.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was supposed to be like a mini cyclone storm, something today. It's been sunny the whole day. It hasn't rained. So forecasts, no, don't believe the forecasts.
Total. Guys, should we kind of take a quick break, which means I can play my advert so that you can all go and subscribe to Football Smash, and I'll put a link into Football Smash into the comments, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the Lankan Premier League, which I was really looking forward to. Book my flights to come over. It's going to be at the final and everything, and turns out it's not going to happen. Hi everyone, this is West Ham Park where the first ever FA Cup goal was scored. I wanted to come out here and tell you guys about Football Smash, my other channel, which is about football, or as Dominic calls it, soccer. There's loads of great content on there from actual football experts like Tim Vickery, Dotun Adebayo, Adrian Goldberg, Charlie Methan, and a host of other former players and managers you've probably heard of. So please, if you're into football or soccer, hit subscribe. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, do hit subscribe. Is that the first time you've seen my advert, Nick?
No, it's the second time, but I liked it just as much. It's so nice you played it twice.
Yeah. Well, it's going to get played a lot more until Football Smash gets like 1 million subscribers. Did it keep seeing it? Dominic loves it so much he's left. I think he might just have switched his camera off for a moment or two. Let's talk about the LPL. So when was it? Tuesday, Wednesday last week? Maybe Thursday. An email drops in to our I think we're all signed up for the press releases from the press officer at SLC saying that the tournament has been cancelled. The official reason is because they've just remembered they've got to host a World Cup in February. And because of that, they've got to upgrade the stadia. What do we think is going on here? Nick, I'll come to you first because you're an avid follower of T20 cricket. How come there'll be no LPL in 2025?
Apologies in advance because I'm just ranting about everything today. But this is just like, this blew my mind last week. I was really quite disheartened and disturbed by this news. Everyone knows that the grounds have to undergo updates before a major tournament. It happened in 2012 and there were major issues around the timing and the way it was done. I think it was going on basically until like the eve of the tournament, and there were matches that were supposed to be played there that weren't. So SLC have known that these updates needed to be undertaken for like months and years, right? It's not, they haven't found this out 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that all the players were denied their NOCs to enter the ILT20 auction because of the LPL, right? So players could have gone and got meaningful cricket there, could have got nice paydays there. They've been kept back so they can play the LPL, which now at the last minute is not happening. I feel similarly to how I do around these washouts in the Women's World Cup. Like, if the people in positions of power wanted this tournament to happen, I'm sure it would be happening, right? Because there's loads of alternatives. I'm pretty sure grounds like the SSC, NCCP, Sarah, Colts, Gaul won't be used for the World Cup next year, so they could have been used to stage the tournament. This work could have been done during the past 6 months when like no cricket has been going on at Palakele or Dambulla. It just feels really sloppy, really last minute, like those people in positions of power don't care, and it's the team that suffers, right? And not just the team, but the players who are on the fringes, the young guys coming through. It's just bad all around. I think the worst part of this is that like there are still spots up for grabs in Sri Lanka's 11, right? We saw at the Asia Cup that the lower middle order is problematic, and you want Sri Lanka's cricketers, not just the guys in that 20-man training squad, but everyone else to be playing as much as they can, building confidence, putting their hand up for selection. And it's just a crying shame for me, Marky. Sorry, I'm ranting.
Esty, the word of the street is. This is just the word of the street. I'm not saying it's true. This is what they said in Colombo. Is that they don't have enough owners and they can't quite figure out to finance the whole thing. But SLC would never lie in a press release, would they?
What are you trying to do, Mark?
Well, I'm just saying, like when you were at the grad, because
I mean, come on. Does anybody believe that it's been postponed because they need to redo the stadiums? Come on.
Well, I think Chris Gale
I mean,
does. Like he's doing videos about his
I mean,
imminent
yeah.
arrival.
I mean, at least we know
Like-
it's happening because the universe boss is coming, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
they
I think
must-
it's just they probably just want to establish a window, right? And they need to do that. We're going into what, sixth? Is it the sixth season or seventh season? They need to establish a window, and they obviously can't compete with the tournaments like the ILT20. So December is
I
not.
mean, you say that. What does that mean? What does it mean? Because the ILT20, what has it got over apart from actually owners? and
No, I think
stadiums that
the
don't need
issue is
work?
whether your players are going to prefer that over this, right? And you don't want to host an LPL where your top players are not there. I think that's probably the biggest question there.
But Sri Lanka at this stage is still in quite a lucky spot where I don't think players are getting paid so much in the ILT20 that they want to jack in play for their home.
But are they getting paid at the LPL? That's the question.
That is a good question. Now that
and
is a good
all
question.
salaries are decent.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But,
if
like-
SLC's short of funds, how much are they paying Chris Gale to do that stupid video? Like, I love Chris Gale more than the next man, but like, that's not moving the needle for anyone. No one's watching that video and going, "Oh, great, the universe boss is there for this tournament that no one knows when the fuck it is." Like, I'm on board. Like, what's it doing? What's the point of it? It's remarkable.
Yeah. I agree with
And
all
not
that.
to mention, like, to any serious cricket fan, like, when did Chris Gale retire?
Right?
I don't think
Retired,
the
he was on
implications
one
co-
foot, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I
he's
don't
not
think
coming
the
as a player.
implications that he's not coming
He's
as a
not coming
player.
as a
I
player.
think
Okay.
no, he's
He's
just coming as an
coming-
ambassador.
Okay,
Like,
cool.
Like,
I didn't
it-
actually watch that video, so
well,
you
like
didn't miss much, SD. It's just him
I mean,
saying
it's
he's
the
coming.
LPL. Like anything could happen. But I mean, the Sri Lankan
I mean,
cricket's so
didn't
weird.
they have Munaf Patel?
Yeah, in the first
Munaf
one,
Patel?
right? Yeah,
You think
first
so?
season.
Yeah.
yeah. And actually, if you go back to the first LPL, Chris Gale was on all the posters for it, but he didn't come because the money didn't get to his account, and he won't leave Jamaica until the money arrives. And he talked openly about that. So presumably somebody has got to his account that he's done a video, or someone's got over enthusiastic cameo. I don't know what's going on here. But I just think for that video to be released just days after they've told us it's not happening is such poor PR.
It felt like a kick in the nuts to me, like after they've cancelled it, to see him saying he's coming to a tournament that doesn't exist. It was like it's like someone's like spitting in your face. It's not. I don't feel great about this at all. Any of this.
Yeah. There's a comment here that's come in. Our T20 league is mismanaged. It's not even the top 10 leagues now. Even the Afghan Spagirza league and Canadian leagues are better rated. I think the Canadian league might be in as much trouble as the Sri Lankan league in terms of stuff that's gone on, because you see players not getting paid in that. Or maybe I'm thinking about an incident from about 15 years ago. I'm not sure. If you're from the Canadian league, I mean you no harm. And I'll happily available to come and work at it if you want me to. And also, if we talk about Canada, go Blue Jays, Sri Lanka's team. But it is true that the Afghan League and the Nepali League are definitely further ahead of where the LPL is, because they can get themselves going and on. I mean, like Afghanistan's in loads of turmoil and they can get their league going. What is going on with Sri Lanka?
All the boards in turmoil, right? The Pakistan cricket is constantly in crisis. They've got a window for the PSL. It's in the same time. It's the same time every year. It works. Like, it shouldn't be rocket science, right?
Yeah, it's terrible. Estelle, have you heard anything about the T10 league? Because that came with massive amounts of fanfare. There's meant to be a T10 men's and women's tournament. The women's one hasn't materialized yet. The men's one was played last year. There was a couple of issues around that we won't talk about because I don't have enough money for the lawyers. But is that going on this year? Do we know?
No, there hasn't been any news about it, right? I assume if the LPL is not happening, they won't really prioritize the T10. But who knows, right?
But the
like
T10's
we could
different
have
circuit,
something
right?
just happen in like a month, and we won't know until it kind of starts.
Because the other two things that have now happened since we last talked about kind of the men's team is that Afghanistan have withdrawn from the tri-series that they were meant to play with us and Pakistan in Pakistan. They have now been replaced by Zimbabwe, as far as I can see. That has been confirmed, which I think that is a dangerous situation for Sri Lanka to be in, because we know that rivalry between Pakistan and Zimbabwe over the fake Mr. Bean incident is absolutely ferocious. And for us to go and inject ourselves into it, I'm not sure about that. It worries me. But look, we're playing Zimbabwe 3 more times this year, at least now. Or twice, sorry, this year at least. That's cool. That's fine. I quite enjoy playing them. And it also means, because of the LPL news, is that there's going to be a whole chunk of December where we should be preparing for the World Cup, which is a couple of months away, where they've got to organise some extra cricket. Some people online were suggesting there might be a tri-series between Bangladesh and Ireland in Sri Lanka, or with Bangladesh and Ireland and Sri Lanka in that window. Other people suggesting Pakistan might be one of those teams. They might reciprocate and come over. Have you guys heard any news about that?
I've heard it's going to be SLC Greys versus SLC Greens 15 times.
I think it's probably going to be that, right?
Greys versus
like
Greens.
That's what's the moment I heard about the LPL being cancelled and preparation for the World Cup, I was like, here we go. It's going to be a domestic tournament.
Yeah. Get ready for Chamaka's 300 off 12.
Oh dear. What are we doing? What are we doing? Why can't we plot these things out properly? Why we're going to be sitting here
because
in February?
We fix the stadiums for the World Cup.
Oh, that we only knew about.
I mean,
3
this
weeks
is
ago.
like, at this stage, there have been so many issues with the LPL owners. Wouldn't it just make sense for SLC to like centrally own these teams like they did in the 100 and try and build from there? Is there not enough money to do that?
It's a difficult thing, because every time anyone ever questions how much money SLC do or don't have, they always come out and say we're a very robustly financially robust organisation, and we have all this money. In fact, we have more money than New Zealand cricket. I don't know why anyone cares about how much money New Zealand have. I kind of agree with you, Nick. If you look at like the 100 model, which was like, let's try and build it, and once it's kind of stable, it will come. I think the problem is, though, ultimately, is that at some point they will want to have outside investment into it. I wonder if, though, this is the opportunity that they were looking for, because actually the foundation wasn't laid very well when they started the LPL, which was meant to start in the COVID year, then got pushed back to basically the end of the COVID year in 2020, and was the launch pad for kind of, the restart of Sri Lankan cricket. But because the foundations were bad, they were never able to sell the teams, which might mean that this is the opportunity they've got to hit the restart and, get the teams in a place where they can be sold on to kind of other people. I mean, we should say franchise cricket around the world is pretty crazy in itself. I mean, Major League Cricket has basically driven USA cricket into the wall, right? And everyone thought that was going to be the beginning of the big American cricket renaissance, and it's turned out to absolutely not be. And franchise leagues pop up all over the world, and as quickly as they arrive, they disappear, right? So, I mean, maybe we feel particularly bad for it because we're probably 3 of the most invested, emotionally invested people in the LPL in the world. But actually, cricketers probably have a more pragmatic view of it, and they're like, yeah, it's not happening this year. Let's try and get ourselves into the ILT20 or the SA20 or whatever it is, and see where else we can make some pounds. I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? I mean, Sri Lanka should be able to have a franchise league, and it should be able to run properly, and people should be able to get paid on time, and the owners should be stable. And that's just not been the case.
Also, it's weird that there was that news about Indian players coming in specifically to the LPL a month before this cancellation, right?
Yeah, so there is definitely something going on there, right? Because people were talking about it. We never really got to talk about it because the news came out when the Women's World Cup was being held, and we were focusing on that. My kind of, I think there's a wider thing going on politically, which is probably worth mentioning on this show, even though it kind of doesn't necessarily deal with Sri Lanka directly. That's that, and I mentioned this around the stage where the Women's World Cup games got staged, that I don't think the BCCI care too much about Pakistani cricket, and I wonder if actually there's movements in the background, and this is pure speculation. If there's a movement in the background to try and maybe suggest to SLC that going to Pakistan for a tour isn't the best thing to do right now. And I kind of do think that maybe that was a carrot that was dangled in front of them. I'm now kind of thinking maybe, where Team India meant to be at that time of year. The Ashes are on. So it's obviously not playing Australia or England. I don't know. I don't follow what series India have until I see them advertised. Is India available at that time of, in that time? Are they going to? Is this why the LPL isn't being played? Is this tour to Pakistan going to be dropped because we can play India in that window? It really it's. I think it's such a crazy sport that could easily happen. I don't know whether I'm overthinking it. I don't know what you guys think about that idea.
Nothing would surprise me at this stage.
Yeah. That's what I thought as well.
Because if Pakistan's big, key pillar of their preparation for this World Cup is this tri-series, if they could somehow pull that out, and it ends up being, Zimbabwe and Ireland, that's a totally different kind of preparation to playing Afghanistan and Sri Lanka for a World Cup in South Asia, right? So let's see. I mean, I'm personally as well, I'm quite frustrated because I'm hoping to try and get to Sri Lanka for the Men's World Cup for some of it. That we're about 100 days away from it beginning, and we don't have any idea of when these games are being played or where they're being played or anything, right?
It's a nightmare, right, Marky?
Yeah.
And it's already looking like a very rocky road to that World Cup, right? Sri Lanka were pretty poor in the Asia Cup, according to me. And now the LPL's been cancelled. So what have they got? We don't know exactly. We don't know where or when games are going to be hosted at that World Cup. That's an ICC thing, not an SLC thing. But it's not building a great picture, is it?
Nah, it's not at all. It's it's great for us because it gives us stuff to talk about. But it's just. There's lots of ifs and buts. It's difficult to plan these things. What's going to happen? We haven't even talked about this squad, the recalls that we've had, because we're talking about when we're going to be playing cricket, and it shouldn't be that case. We should be just focusing on who's going to play, how we're going to play, what's our 11 going to look like, what are our options going to look like, how we're going to win this tournament, and we're trying to figure out what our fixtures are. It's not dissimilar, going into the Women's World Cup, when we hadn't played for 3 months, I was like, well, they would never let this situation happen with the men. But it looks like, actually, as it stands right now, we've got this tri-series in November in about, 2 weeks' time. Then, as it stands, I don't think there's anything actually in the Canada till England come for 3 ODIs and 3 T20s at the back end of January into February. And that goes almost straight into the World Cup. I'm guessing that was forced by the ECB because they wanted to play those games here as a kind of warm-up, right? I don't, let's not. I don't think we can credit SLC for that. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, and maybe there is a great big plan, and maybe it will all come together, and the power of Pathum and Sanath combined gets us a World Cup. I don't know. Guys, I want to end this by playing a clip. We've got all. I've got uncharacteristically pessimistic about Sri Lanka in this episode. But I think right. I want to play a clip from the what's it called? Is it Kim Upper? The show,
Yeah.
SD, with Jared Kimber and Robin Yutapa. They did a show about, I think it was almost exactly a week ago, where Jared's team had collated all the data about who the kind of next generation of players would be, who the players to look out for, which teams in 5 years' time could be good, which teams in 5 years' time could be bad, or potentially have problems because they haven't blooded enough players at this point in time to be good in the future. As you'd imagine, India come out top in all the rankings in terms of they've got loads of great youngsters with both bat, ball, and administration and everything that could really shape what the game looks like in 5 years' time. But the conversation was around which team could be the second best team. And one of the sides that was in consideration was Sri Lanka, which I got obviously over enthusiastic about. And I was trying to send it. I sent it to everyone in Murali End. I was like, watch this. This is really exciting. And then I heard Robin Yutapa talk about Sri Lanka's chances. He talked about what he thinks of the team now, and what he thinks, how Sri Lanka needs to develop and where it goes. Let me see if I can get this right. So that, right, if I do that and then take this away. Hold on. And now I think if I do this, I think you should be able to watch it.
Lanka maybe, but if Sri Lankan cricket don't make wholesale changes to their side like they've been doing over the last 6 years, right? I think they make too many changes here, and I think these are some of the guys who played. Even them, I think there's just been the players have been so insecure within that system. I think after Sanath has come and taken over the system, I think he's brought in a little bit more consistency with the kind of players that play. And he's basically running the show right now. So I think from that point of view, I think there's a little bit more consistency with Sri Lanka. But if they have to get really, really good, then they have to continue to keep these players on for a particular period of time. Like Kusal Pereira was out of action for 1.5 years, 2 years because of his accident, and then took a while to get back, and then bad form and got dropped and came back. And they have some good players there. I don't think they get. One is, I think there's a serious mindset issue, because I think because of the players feeling so insecure, I think they operate from survival mode and not from feeling secure and just looking to play the best cricket that they can possibly play. So I think that mindset, and when you play with that small mindset, then the outcomes are also not the greatest, and I think they kind of hover between two mindsets like that. There are times when they just kind of go out there and play with absolute freedom, and they look like $1 million. I'm saying not just batting, even their bowling. They look $1 million. But there are days when it's like they just don't turn up mentally. It's not like the skill set's not there. They just mentally don't turn up. And that leaves them wanting in some important tournaments. And I hope that one is that mindset shifts. If that mindset shifts, buddy, I won't be surprised if they'll be the number 2 side in 5 years.
But neither of us would feel comfortable picking this number 2 side, I think, at the moment. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So these are my 3 options for number 2. South Africa, right? They don't have as many players on this list, but they do actually have some younger players coming through, even that aren't on this list. England, because they've got the batting.
England, I'd say.
Bowling, a bit of a question. And then Sri Lanka. I think if you're making a guess at the moment, England makes the best sense for number 2, just because there's enough batting there that both of us are like, in 5 years' time, they'll have some really, really good players who'll be flying by that point, right? So yeah. I'm happy to go with England at number 2. So I think
Australia, you're not even considering Australia?
No.
I ended that clip there deliberately because I like it when he said no, not even considering Australia. Let me try and get our frame back. and put us all in the right places. Nick, I'll come to you first though, because I think that was your first time seeing that clip. Well, what did you make of what former Indian superstar and IPL superstar Robin Uthappa said about Sri Lanka? Because I thought he got it absolutely spot on there.
Yeah, I've got to say I was quite surprised because Robbie's talking some serious sense, right? I think that word he used, survivalist, is really interesting. And I was just thinking about Matisha Patirana when he was saying that, about how we haven't yet seen the best of Patirana in the Sri Lanka shirt and how much of that links to this kind of security of place and this sense that he's never really had the backing from Sri Lanka's top brass, whoever that may be. And like, he's not the only one, right? We've talked about it on this show, Kamindu being given the kind of run at number 3 in the T20 side last year. Suddenly he's a finisher now. And I think that a lot of Sri Lanka's failings have been down to mindset in recent years. And we keep talking about the idea that this team is lesser than the sum of their parts. I feel like there's all the talent there to be the second best side in world cricket in 5 years' time. You look at how many players who are just bursting through now are still going to be there and who you'd expect to be better versions of themselves. But we have seen often that progression isn't linear in Sri Lankan cricket, right? And that sometimes these players can regress rather than progress. I agree with what Robbie's saying, is that players need to be given more confidence, but I think some of that has to come from themselves as well as from the administration.
Esty, what was your thoughts when you were watching them talk there?
Yeah, no, he's right, isn't he? Sri Lanka have had that issue for a long time where they've kind of had to chop and change. I guess it's also difficult because similar to, well, it's not the same in the women's game, but it feels like Sri Lanka always have stakes, right, when they play. So it's difficult sometimes to give a lot of opportunities as well. And the fact that the domestic and the franchise leagues aren't that kind of platform where you can really, get to see what players are capable of is a problem. Because like if you look at India, and I would assume in that video they're talking about number 2 because India is clearly the number 1 team, right? For India, when you see players performing in the IPL, sure, it might not always be at the level of international cricket in certain ways, but you're getting to see what they are actually capable of at, as close to the highest level as you can get, right? But Sri Lanka don't have that in franchise cricket or domestic cricket, and I think that is the problem. So you're basically, and this has always been a problem. Like even the times when Sangas and Mahelas were playing, it was always that players were learning the game while playing international cricket. They weren't the finished product coming into international cricket. So that's always a problem, and it's always about potential, right? When you look at Sri Lankan players, you're always picking on potential rather than actual, like, no, this guy's proved that he can do well at the highest level, that's why we're picking him. You're picking him based on what you think could be. And I think Nick made a comment earlier when we were talking about the women's team about how long can you actually just talk about potential and what could be, right? At some point that has to come into fruition. And I think that's one of the big problems Sri Lanka has had for years. It's not a new problem. I don't know whether it will go. I mean, we just spoke about the LPL being postponed or cancelled for this year. I don't know how you fix that problem without a strong domestic and franchise competition.
It's worth going back and watching that episode. I'll put a link to it in the description because at the beginning of it, they talk about batters and you see how far ahead Pathum Nissanka is compared to everyone else apart from, I think it's Shubman Gill. Is it Shubman Gill? Who's the other players? The two of them are way out front, and then everyone else is quite far in their kind of age group, quite far behind them. And I think Pathum is such the future of this podcast over the next 5 years is going to be us talking about Pathum Nissanka, right? If you haven't, if it hasn't been for the last 2 or 3 years since he debuted, and I think Pathum Nissanka's got to be the kind of benchmark for what we expect of our players, Pathum Kamindu, where it's like you look at they've just got ironclad mentalities where it's like we just want to be the best players we can be. We're just going to work on the areas which need improving on, where we're not scoring runs, what's our patterns of getting out, how do we work against that? Which is, you look through the cricket history books, be it Virat, be it Sangha, happy birthday Sangha, by the way, and all the way back to WG Grace, I imagine. And players work on their weaknesses and they get mentally stronger over time. And that's, I feel, something that we don't see enough of. I haven't seen enough of, and that's what Robbie's talking about, isn't it? But if we can develop a few more patterns, then who knows where we can be in 5 years' time? Everyone knows I'm an optimist, right? So I think it's an exciting time for both the men's and the women's sides. There's lots of good youngsters coming through, right? And I'm excited about what the future might hold. Guys, should we leave it there for today? We've been talking for over an hour now. Even had 2 little breaks in the middle as well. If you got this far and you haven't subscribed, I don't know what I can do to persuade you to do that. We'll be back probably this time next week, unless there's some emergency breaking news. This is Sri Lankan Cricket, so who knows? Something could happen in the next few days. If that does happen, we'll get together and we'll talk about it. Please tell your friends, tell all your family, leave your comments, hit the subscribe button. We'll see you guys all next week. Thanks a lot for watching and listening. See you later. Bye.
It's the Murali End, you're the place to be. Analyze the players and the team. Keep a great company in the stream. It's the Murali End. Welcome to the show. We're here when you're high. We're here when you're low. Some days you're happy, some days you wanna win. When happy, it's we, when mad, it's them. It's the same place, Murali End. Sri Lankan Cricket, we gon' represent. Go tell a friend.